Welcome to the Southeastern Ohio Woodlands again today. We're out here on a late spring day working on our boundaries before the leaves come out. And my name is Rickey. I'm a service forester with ODNR Division of Forestry. And today we are out at a woodland property that is a private landowner's, and we are locating the evidence of the boundary. We have a map from the property and we have a copy of the deed. So we have those two important starting points to follow today. And you'll see those maps at certain points in the video today. So what we're looking at right here where I'm standing at is we've just came off of a boundary pin and we got a straight line we're following, and we got to find our old evidence. And everybody out there says, well, how do you find the old evidence? And I hear it all the time. We need things like a metal detector and so forth. So today I'm going to show you the old school way of doing this. You can go to the GPS units and all that to follow your maps, but they still won't give you the old evidence. So I'm going to show you how I do it today. And this is an old school trick. But right behind me you can clearly see the neighbor has a trail. And this is an old road bed. You're slightly above me there at the camera. And I'm going to walk over here to the other edge of what used to be an old road bed. And you're going to see that we're just at the edge of a woods. There's really nothing here. So as I come across here, I come up this little rise right here. And this tells me there's an old road here. Or it might even have been a place where they used to farm. And this is what we would consider a dead furrow. But the important thing is this still doesn't indicate anything that we've been following as our evidence. And we had some old fence way up there, but now we've just ran out of evidence, or so it appears. And nature is always working on this, and it covers the evidence, and metal rots away, it rusts. So what we got to do is find it. And everybody again goes back to, well, get a metal detector and find it. Well, I have a simpler way of doing it, and this is from growing up many years ago bow hunting with aluminum arrows. And when we'd lose aluminum arrows in the grass, we'd have to find them things because we didn't want to keep buying more of them. It was kind of expensive and a pain in the rear. So here's what we used to do. I've adapted this just a little bit. I'm going to use my marking axe today, my forester's axe, if you will. And it's got my measurements on it to do the diameters and heights of trees, to measure all the forestry measurements. But what I'm going to really do is something that no bladesmith wants you to do. I'm going to sink this into the ground and I'm going to pull it toward me. And if you listen, you will hear if I hit the metal. And right here is a piece of fence buried down in the leaf litter. So now we have our piece of fence. So we'll take a little bit of ribbon and put on it. Does this mean that it's the boundary line? Not necessarily. Because as gravity works, when a fence falls down, it usually falls downhill. So what we might be off is the length of the height of the pole that fell down. Or in this case, we have an old road bed here. A piece of equipment drives through here, gets hung up in a fence, it can stretch it around a little bit everywhere. So this is helping me figure out my pattern. What helps me figure out where it's always been is up here. This has grown right into this little scarlet oak tree. Despite the fact this tree is small, it's quite old. And if we look right here, here is the next piece of fence right in this tree. So I will highlight that again with some ribbon. I'll put that on there to show why we say this is the boundary. And then I will go up the tree and I will hang more ribbon so that we can see this boundary ribbon from a greater distance as we work on the boundary. Because it's important to be able to turn around and see where you've been and then turn around and see where you're going, or vice versa. This is a much easier job with two people, but you can do it with one. And that involves a compass or a GPS unit. But the old school system that I use still is the compass. Once you get your bearing and directions from your deed, it'll tell you how far to go and what direction you're going. And how you use that compass is it has a little sight on the top, and it's got a dial in there. Once you get this dialed in for your degrees of declination and the direction of your survey direction, you'll end up shooting this like this, just like you're shooting a gun with a scope or a sight. and you'll look out through that in the distance until you see something that's right on that line, and then you'll walk out and hang ribbon on that. Then you can turn around and backside 180 degrees to see the same thing behind you. You can turn around to the front, and it will also keep you dialed in the same directions. You can keep going that route. And again, this is much easier with two people because you can stand there and tell your friend to go out and hang ribbon on that tree, or move left, go farther left, hang it there, go right, or whatever's needed. And once they hang that ribbon, then you can walk up to that spot while they're walking out in front of you. So, but unfortunately, in most cases for me, being a forester, I don't have somebody with me to do this. So you pretty much do it by yourself. But the compass still works so that you can do it all by yourself. So today what we got is a nice big chestnut oak here. It's a boundary line tree. And we highlighted our evidence of that right here with the pink ribbon for temporary. This is the old fence that the tree has grown over. So this is an indication of where the fence has always been for no idea how many years. Quite a few, we'll just leave it at that. But this thing is old woven wire, so this establishes our pattern of what we're looking for down through here too. So we should be able to find some more fence as we go along this boundary line. And this is going down a straight section of line, and it's not very long. So the fence ran right through this, so this will be our boundary tree. Our next boundary tree is going to be right over here. So bear with me as I go through the brush. And we'll go to this next big chestnut oak right here. That is a multiple stem. And this one has been cut off after it broke off from a storm. But this is still going to be our boundary. And right here is our fence. It's tucked down in here. So again, we can highlight that with a little bit of ribbon real quick to say why we say this is the boundary. And this helps establish what has always been the boundary as we follow the evidence. So, as we go though, as we all know, life is not always perfect. So you can clearly see our trees are coming down this direction, and then they keep on going down to this next big tree, but we got a little bit of a surprise here. This is a very short section on the map for boundary, and the reason why I walk out here and have a seat on this neat little wagon is the boundary is actually right here, right through the middle of it. And if you look behind me, you can see the pin is highlighted with pink down below. And we know from our map that we have for this property here today that we're just on a very short section of line that's straight. And the boundary pin is directly behind the camera now. So if we make a straight line, it runs right through this wagon, right down this old road, right in the middle of it to the pin. So in reality, these trees to my right are about 30 feet off of what the real boundary is. But the neighbors talk and they agree to continue to use it as is. But this is something that we run into from time to time, and we always encourage you to talk to your neighbors and work this out and make sure everything's okay. But both neighbors acknowledge that the trees are over on the one side of the boundary and the real boundary is over here. They both understand that, and they still function as it is today. So again, they don't really need a surveyor at this point. Both pins are easily found and we're very close together. So this thing lines up pretty simple, and you can almost see from one point to the other. Not quite, so that's why we're not going to spin around and show you the back side of this thing. But you can clearly see this is a bit of a difference. And it's not that big of a deal on a short line, but certainly as a line goes for say a half mile, this thing gets broader as it goes. It makes a big difference that way sometimes. So again, always talk to your neighbors, use ribbon first, get everybody on board with what you're doing, just marking what's the boundary. You're not trying to claim something that's not yours, you're just trying to mark where the boundary is, and then get everybody to agree on it before you mark it. And again, these two landowners might decide to go ahead and paint and put some posts up down through here and put the boundary right down through here. Obviously, this old wagon hasn't moved for quite a while. This is an old steel wheel wagon from before rubber tire days. This is a great example of how your boundary evidence disappears over time. This is the inside of a large tree that has broken off over time. And if you look closely, right here is our evidence of the fence This is a piece of metal sticking out of the tree here. It's just about gone. And there's one more right there. So we mark everything we can find, and this is our old boundary evidence. Today we found the stone, and right here is our cut direction indicator, right on the top of it. And this is giving us confirmation of what the original, in this case today, we're in southern Ohio on the west side of the Scioto River. We're in what they call the Virginia Military Survey area. So, not much about the Virginia Military is real nice and square and spelled out good. So this stone was probably set in here from the original survey and has been in here for, gosh, pushing a couple hundred years now. So here we are, but this thing confirms where we're at and where our line would keep going. And that is what we want to highlight this. So I painted the blue on the back, indicating this is the neighbor over here. And I've went ahead and highlighted for you today the cut stone with a little bit of blue up here too. So what we'll also do is we'll put 3 marks of paint on this to point people to this stone. And there's a tree right behind the camera that we'll put 3 marks of paint on it. And these things will be our witness to where the stone's at. So again, we want to highlight the stone. We want to highlight our corners. We do not want to hide our evidence. We want to show it off.